Hey there. Welcome back to the St. Mary's St. Peter's Parish Music Ministry YouTube channel. Oh, that's a mouthful. I'm Barry Russo, and the topic for today is, can singing be learned? Is singing a skill that you're born with, and if you're not born with it, should you just forget about it? Or is it a skill that can be learned and developed and nurtured and studied? Well, my answer to that is definitely the second of those two choices. I believe that singing is a skill that can be learned and developed and studied. That being said, if you're someone who's a natural born singer, and I think we've all heard singers like that, people that just sounds like they've been singing forever, right? You know, if you were born with that skill, or maybe at a very young age you were surrounded by so much singing that it became a natural and normal part of your world, and you take that natural ability and you combine it with the learning and the studying and the developing, well, then the sky's the limit, right? But for the rest of us, yes, I believe singing can be learned. I've been asked this question by people from St. Mary's, St. Peter's, and I'm sure people dropping by the YouTube channel may have this question. So I thought that as you navigate these topics, that I would just briefly give you my own background and maybe it can help you out in some way. First off, I'm my own worst critic when it comes to singing, even to this day. I hear myself, in recordings, and I'm just picking it apart, you know what I mean? That can be a good thing because it's good to always want to improve yourself, but at the same time, at some point, that can become an obstacle and a barrier. And then that gets into the whole topic of being patient with yourself and accepting yourself for where you're at. And that's a whole other discussion. But I am my own worst critic. My principal instrument was, is, and always will be piano. Now, being involved in church music ministry for so many years, I've studied and developed my skills on organ. I know sometimes people look at organ and they're like, well, isn't it the same thing? It's kind of keyboard, but, it's a different approach, different technique. You have to learn the registrations and the pedaling, and I've done that. But my principal instrument will always be piano. And singing didn't even come on the radar screen for me until I was 16 years old. I was working in my first church music ministry job in my hometown of Cranston, Rhode Island, and I was working in a parish with 5 masses a weekend. And the first weekend I was getting the lay of the land. 3 of the masses there was a lady who played guitar and sang with me. Another mass, the choir was there. And 10 minutes before the final mass of the weekend, I went up to the pastor and I said, "Hey, Father, who sings at this mass?" And he goes, "You do." I'm like, "But I don't sing." He's like, "You do now." Talk about trial by fire. I mean, I had a vocal range that was probably that big, just a few notes maybe, and my voice was quivering like crazy. Part of that was nerves, and part of it was, getting in the way. A lot of times we get in the way of our voice's natural process, right? So over time I got more comfortable. And then the next challenge came outside of the church setting when I was a keyboard player for a local rock band, and we did the whole bar and nightclub scene. I had the big PA and light show. And if you're familiar with live band setups, a lot of times the PA is out in front and the band's up on stage behind it. And nowadays they have the in-ear monitors, but back then there were the floor wedges. And a lot of times, with the volume of the guitar on 11 out of 10 amplifiers and the drums and everything, you couldn't hear what was going on, right, with the floor monitors. A lot of times just didn't cut through all the instrument sound. So the first song I ever, they wanted me to sing 1 or 2 songs a night, and the first song I ever sang in that setting was by the band In Excess, called "Don't Change." Let me tell you, my voice sounded like it was changing, all right, quivering. And now once again, it was probably nerves, but it was also probably trying to push through that environment, right? So after that, I decided I wanted to study how to sing better. And I had a few different teachers, but the 2 long-term teachers I had, the first one was more of a self-taught guy who had studied a lot of classical training and exercises and adapted it to a program for pop and rock singers. And the second long-term teacher I had was more of a traditional college vocal professor, worked on a lot of classical repertoire with him and exercises and other repertoire as well. And between the 2 of them, I'm grateful that I had the experience with both of them. So studying with those teachers and also just continuing to get on the bike and keep trying to ride it. You fall off, you get back on it, right? Keep doing it. I developed my singing. Now, you may have the question, well, where do I begin? What do I do? Is it even worth trying if I can't, automatically just do it right now? I definitely think it is worth developing and working on, right? And so my advice to you, if you're in that situation, maybe you want to sing, but, you feel like you struggle with it. First thing, get yourself a qualified vocal instructor, whether that's somebody in your local area or whether, we've learned over the last few months with the pandemic, there's a lot of things available online, whether that be programs that you sign up for or maybe even one-on-one lessons. Try different teachers, get recommendations, and definitely get to work with a vocal instructor. Second thing, definitely put yourself out there in as many situations as possible where you can ride the bike, you know what I mean, where you can just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, whether that be joining a choir, joining a community group, singing karaoke, whatever. Put yourself out there singing. If you're from St. Mary's, St. Peter's, you can always join the choir. That's my sales pitch for today, without the pinstripe suit, right? Third thing is to be patient with yourself. If you have a relative that's a kid that lives far away, you only see them every couple of years, and then you see them, you're like, wow, you're growing up. But if you saw them every day, you might not be so able to notice it, so profoundly, right? Same thing. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not like, tomorrow you're going to wake up and all of a sudden your voice is going to be totally different, all right? But over time, it will develop. And the last thing is to be patient with yourself. We all have somebody maybe we want to sound like, but maybe our vocal structure physically is different, you know what I mean? So a lot of vocal training is learning your own voice, okay? Learning what your voice is all about. Now, I'm not saying that you can't try to push beyond those barriers, but definitely to grow to know your own voice and to, be at peace with that, okay? So you can also, if you find the exercises on this channel helpful, that can be a good thing. When it comes to instruction, my forte is piano. Okay, I don't consider myself to be a voice teacher. Okay, now I have worked with people on their singing, but I've always done that with the understanding that piano is my primary forte when it comes to instruction. I'm more than happy to pass along the things that I've learned and to try to help. But, if you're really serious about doing this, I would definitely recommend, getting somebody who specializes in vocal instruction, okay? So, like I said, if you're from St. Mary's, St. Peter's, you want to sing, join the choir. If you find the material on this channel helpful, feel free to hit that like button. I love saying that. And until the next video, take care.